Sensory neurons have a problem that is solved by spontaneous activity. Imagine a sensory neuron that is responding to some input by opening channels at multiple locations. Here's one location opening stretch channels or binding at a chemoreceptor, allowing ions in. That charge then spreads to the spike initiating region and depolarizes the cell. A problem is that with a weak stimulus, that depolarization might be 1 millivolt. Threshold is -45. If we plot voltage versus time, starting at -70 with threshold, what we'd see is these small changes, and even with large depolarizations, we're still not at threshold. This neuron is extremely insensitive to small changes in voltage. If we graphed number of action potentials per second, 0 to 100 at perhaps saturation for this neuron, and stimulus intensity, low to high, what we'd see is that the stimulus can get higher and higher and higher, and only when we finally get to the point where we reach a stimulus that brings us to -45 do we start seeing an increase in number of action potentials per second. Weak stimuli are outside the dynamic range of this neuron. The solution to this problem involves spontaneous activity. In spontaneous activity, the spike initiating region has many normal voltage-gated sodium channels, but in addition, interspersed, it has another voltage-gated sodium channel. This is the Na sub V 1.5 voltage channel. The normal voltage-gated sodium channels we've been talking about, there are at least 9 different voltage-gated sodium channels available. They all have different sensitivities to voltage. So the standard voltage-gated sodium channel we've been talking about starts to open at around -45 millivolts. But the NAV type opens at around -70 millivolts. So around -70 millivolts, some, not all, but some of these are opening and closing. Even without any input, some of these pop open and allow sodium in. Now these are too far apart to start an action potential on their own, but one opens, then it closes, another may open, and we get another burst of sodium in, and all over the spike initiating region, these NAV 1.5s are opening and closing at random. So if we graphed the effect over time, instead of the standard that I just sketched, even without any input, starting at -70, we'd have constant fluctuations up and down. And any time one of these hit -45 or threshold, we'd get an action potential. And as these bounce around, each time we get above -45, we get another action potential. What these NAV 1.5 voltage-gated sodium channels do is they create what are called spontaneous action potentials. At first, this seems like a bad idea. We're wasting energy on spontaneous action potentials that have no benefit. Look at what it does to the sensitivity of our neuron. If some event, maybe binding of a ligand or opening of stretch channels, allows sodium in, positive charge is in addition to whatever random amount of charge, often much greater, that's coming from the NAV 1.5 voltage-gated sodium channels. If we plot what happens over time, we have the background going up and down and occasionally producing a spontaneous action potential. But now let's add our 1 millivolt depolarization. We had a 1 millivolt or maybe 2 millivolts depolarization. Threshold is at -45, and with our 1 or 2 millivolt depolarization added on top of the spontaneous action potentials, we now get a new action potential right here, and perhaps another new one here, and here it had no effect. With spontaneous activity, we get action potentials induced by very weak stimuli.